Conversation with the Candidate continues right now.
Welcome back to our conversation with the candidate, with a not quite yet candidate just yet, former Vice President Mike Pence, a Republican from Indiana. It's time to bring in our questions from our audience of town hall voters here. They're going to have questions. I'll have a couple of follow-ups and online viewer questions as well, but we want to jump right into it to finish the half hour for television. We're going to start things off with Terry Robinson.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
If you, as president, could successfully address one of our country's key issues, which one would you choose and why?
You know, I just became a grandfather 2 years ago for the first time. And then my daughter-in-law and my daughter gave us two more. We got three granddaughters. And I think the biggest issue facing this country, one that we don't talk about, is the national debt. I mean, the truth is we're facing inflation at a 40-year high, and when the Biden administration borrowed another $2 trillion at the outset of their administration for unnecessary COVID spending, that ignited that inflation that's really impacting families here in New Hampshire and across the country. But the truth is today we have a national debt the size of our nation's economy, first time since World War II. But it's about to increase by 5 times in the next 25 years. And when I think of those three granddaughters of mine, I think we got a moral obligation in this generation to adopt the kind of common sense, compassionate reforms of entitlements in America that'll keep our promise to seniors today, keep our promise to anybody that's going to retire in 25 years, but reforms those systems so that we lift the burden of this mountain range of debt off our children and grandchildren. Our ability to provide for the common defense, our ability to have a growing economy is going to depend on us producing leadership that will tackle that debt crisis that's facing our children and grandchildren. And if I'm spending more time in New Hampshire over the next 6 months, we're going to be talking a lot about it.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Next question comes from George Matthews.
Hi, George.
Hi. Thanks for coming. I know you're pro-life, and for me, that should always include the mother.
Thank you, George.
I've had several friends that have had troubled pregnancies, and if abortion were not available, they would not be with us anymore. Given that the so-called exceptions from some states have turned out to be too ambiguous for doctors to risk their careers and freedom, what will you do to protect these mothers?
Well, I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. I've been a champion of the right to life since I arrived in Congress now more than 20 years ago. In fact, when our children were very young, we were first elected to Congress, the way we explained to our children the fact that we sold our dream home, moved back to my hometown, spent all of our savings running for office was, we just looked at them and said, we're doing it for the babies. And so you can imagine what a privilege it was for me to be a part of an administration that appointed 3 of the justices that sent Roe versus Wade to the ash heap of history and gave our nation a new beginning for the right to life. For me, though, there's some discussion these days about this has been returned to the states only, and that's simply not what the Supreme Court did. The Supreme Court returned the question of abortion, which is a deeply, profoundly important issue in the heart of our nation, to the states and to the American people. And so I was in Ohio just last week. I'll continue to champion efforts to advance the cause and the sanctity of life, to come alongside women that are facing crisis pregnancies. I think we ought to be supporting newborns and the unborn in equal measure. We ought to be doing adoption reform across the country. We ought to make sure if there are exceptions that they're carefully crafted narrowly for exigent circumstances. But at the end of the day, I would also tell you that if I'm ever called back into public service in our nation's capital, I'll also look for ways to advance the sanctity of life at the national level. The proposals for a threshold that's more in line with Western nations around the country. I mean, the truth is the Democratic Party today holds the view that they support abortion on demand all the way up to the moment of birth and taxpayer funding of abortion. I will tell you that that's the policy in places like China and Iran. It's not consistent with most Western nations. So at the national level, I'd certainly support efforts to advance a threshold standard, even while we work to advance the cause of life in one state after another. But I truly do believe in the unalienable right to life. And if we'll stand on principle and we'll show unprecedented compassion to women who've been through the experience, but also women that are facing crisis pregnancies, we'll make progress for life in America.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up for you, Mr. Vice President. If you had to draw the line at weeks of gestation on a federal law, where are you at? I know some states want to do 6 weeks, some talk about 15. What's your preferred drawing line?
Well, first, I fully support the heartbeat bills that have been passed in places like Ohio and Georgia and Florida. But there's a bill on Capitol Hill that I think enjoys support of 70% of Americans that would establish a 15-week threshold that, again, is more in line with most Western nations, Adam. I mean, America's really an outlier on this issue, and it breaks my heart to think that our laws are more in line with China and Iran on this question than they are with most Western nations and European countries. So a minimum threshold at the national level, but I'd certainly support a heartbeat bill, a 6-week bill, there or anywhere else.
Next question coming from Joan Whitworth.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Various polls show between 2 and 7% of voters preferring you versus nearly half and almost a quarter supporting President Trump and Governor DeSantis, respectively. Why do you think you are trailing so far behind them, and what is your plan to gain voter support in the coming months?
Well, number one, I'm really grateful for that 7%, and very humbled by it. I'm not a candidate right now. We'll keep you posted here in New Hampshire, I promise. But the fact that ever since I left office, there's always been a certain percentage of Republicans that have mentioned us for the highest office in the land is deeply humbling to me. You know, I'm just a small town guy from southern Indiana. I grew up with a cornfield in my backyard. I mean, the idea that many Americans talk about me for the highest office in the land is a great joy. But I honestly think, look, I think no one could have defeated Hillary Clinton in 2016 other than my old running mate. I think the people of New Hampshire, the Republicans around the country chose wisely, chose the right standard bearer. But I think different times call for different leaders. And if I'm spending more time here in New Hampshire, I'm very confident that once those debates begin, once we begin to talk about the issues, the future of the country, Republican primary voters will choose just the right standard bearer to meet this moment, elect a Republican president, and we'll turn this country around.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
Thank you.
Question coming in from the realms of the online, Mr. Vice President. James Dozier of Portsmouth, New Hampshire asks, your home state of Indiana and many Republican-led states have announced billions of dollars in new clean energy investments for solar, electric vehicles, and battery manufacturing. What steps can Republicans take to ensure these investments are made responsibly and in Republican-led states such as New Hampshire?
Well, James, number one, I really believe in what we've commonly referred to through history as federalism. I mean, Ronald Reagan said in his first inaugural address, remember, states created the federal government didn't create the states. And I hardly need to say that in a live free or die state, right? I mean, but I believe in state-based innovation and reform. And I would tell you that when I was governor of the state of Indiana, we took an all-of-the-above energy strategy. We said we're a coal mining state, coal burning state, coal, natural gas, oil, but we also, we also worked on renewables and wind, solar, and I'm someone that believes that we ought to continue to develop those technologies. What I don't believe in is the environmental left in this country pressing down an agenda that ultimately will impact the quality of life here in New Hampshire and around America by dramatically raising the cost of electricity from traditional fossil fuel sources. I mean, we always ought to be innovating. We're Americans. We're always thinking of a better mousetrap, a better way to do things. But the idea that was first popularized by President Barack Obama, now President Biden, and the radical environmental left has continued to push their green agenda down on America, is all designed to drive us out of traditional sources of energy driven by natural gas, oil, coal, by raising the price. And I'm just not willing to have Americans bear that burden. We ought to encourage innovation, encourage energy diversification, but we shouldn't be making American families and American businesses pay a price that countries around the world are not paying.
Next question comes from Talia Flores.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my question. Most Americans, including a growing number of Republicans, favor common sense gun laws. What, if any, gun or assault weapons legislation would you commit to signing if elected president, or are you instead committed to vetoing any such legislation?
Well, I'm a constitutional conservative. I've taken strong stands for the Constitution, oftentimes against my own party. I opposed a Republican president when I was in Congress, when I thought he was expanding the Federal Department of Education beyond the boundaries contemplated in the Constitution. And at the end of my tenure as vice president, I took a strong stand on the Constitution as well. I believe in the First Amendment, and I believe in the Second Amendment. The right of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms is in our Constitution for a reason, and we ought to stand by it, and we ought to protect it and preserve it. That being said, our administration did strengthen the infrastructure for background checks to make sure that our system was working, particularly in the wake of Sutherland Springs in Texas, the horrific church shooting that took place. But I would tell you, I don't believe the answer is gun control. I recently gave a major address in the wake of some of these recent mass shootings and said, I think what we ought to do is a couple of different things. Number one, we ought to just get over, now this is me as a grandfather talking now, just get over the issue of funding security at our local schools, and the federal government, if needs be, ought to make it possible for every public and private school in America to have an armed security guard on campus who's trained and knows how to protect our kids. Full stop. We ought to secure our schools. Secondly, I really do believe that justice delayed is justice denied. And these aberrant people who will go out and commit these mass shootings, I think the very notion that the man that killed so many students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas in Florida is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, that doesn't sound like justice to me. I think we ought to have a federal statute that says if you engage in a mass shooting, that you will face capital punishment in months, not years. We ought to expedite the appeals process. Don't deny anybody due process of law, but somebody ought to understand they're not going to spend 20 years with 3 square meals a day if they engage in a mass shooting anywhere in this country. Finally, mental health. The last thing I did as governor of Indiana was I broke ground on the first mental health hospital that had been built in our state in 30 years. It was back in the 1970s, we walked away from institutional mental health care. There's a lot of people that are homeless here in New Hampshire and around the country who are living under bridges who frankly should be in some institution. And back in the day when we were growing up, they were. But those institutions don't exist anymore. And when you think about the nexus between people with severe mental illness, like I mentioned this Florida case, this terrible, horrific case at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, what broke my heart after it was over, talking to students and families, was how many times the shooter's mother went to the authorities and said, please do something about him. Is there some place we can send him, something we can do? But there was nowhere to go. So I think swift justice, protecting our schools, and ultimately having a national conversation about returning to institutional mental health care in this country is an idea whose time has come. And those, rather than one more debate over gun control, remember, some of the most violent cities in America have the toughest gun control laws. What I want to do is things that I believe are effective, and those are the areas that I advanced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question from Marie Mulroy.
Yes, hi.
Hi,
Thank you
Marie.
for taking my question. And I was just wondering, what is your greatest wish for America?
My greatest what, ma'am?
Your greatest wish for America?
I'd just like to have government as good as our people again. I mean, I got to tell you, in my 20 years of public service, my opinion of our national government went down. But my opinion of the American people went up every day. This is a great country. I mean, I've gone to places where hurricanes struck, where wildfires, where flooding occurred, and I've seen absolute strangers rush into communities with coolers full of water and food, hammers and nails to help people they never met before and would never see again put their life back together. And all they generally ask before they leave is to have a quick word of prayer and go back to their lives. This is the most generous, idealistic, freedom-loving, faith-filled country in the world. We don't have government as good as our people. And part of that is the way government deals with one another. You know, I tell people, you get 15 miles out of Washington, D.C., people in this country actually get along pretty well, right? But in Washington and in the public debate, we are at a loggerheads on both sides of the aisle. It's not just one side, both sides of the aisle. And I'm someone that's tried to live out in my life a level of respect and civility with people, even those with whom I differ. And if I'm ever called back to public service, I'll try and live that out as well. So having government that reflects the idealism, the values, but also the respect the American people show one another, to me that's an aspiration that I have for our nation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, we got about a minute left in the show, so I'll ask you one last quick question. One of your predecessors in the vice presidential office, John Nance Garner, has a famous aphorism about the vice presidency, which we can't actually say on TV, but basically he didn't value it very highly. Would you ever want to be vice president again?
You know, for me, it was the greatest privilege of my life to serve as your vice president. And I believe that in our years of service, we strengthened our military, we revived our economy, we saw conservatives appointed to our courts that would hold up our Constitution, and we saw America through the worst pandemic in 100 years, and it was a great honor for me to serve in that capacity. But Adam, in all candor, I think running twice for vice president of the United States is probably enough for any American. and if we have another calling in public life, it might just be a little bit higher.
All right. Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for joining us on Conversation with a Candidate. Thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone in the crowd. Next week, we're going to have Nikki Haley on the Conversation with a Candidate program. She is a declared candidate for president, but that does it for us tonight. Thank you for watching Conversation with a Candidate.